Amelia's family had struggled for years. They lived in a small house, always short on money. That was until Victor, a handsome, wealthy businessman, entered their lives. He seemed to have it all: money, power, and a calm demeanor that charmed everyone. When he offered his love to Amelia, her family saw it as a golden opportunity to escape their financial troubles. But there were always oddities about Victor. He rarely spoke of his past, and when Amelia asked, he would change the subject quickly. He was perfect on the surface, yet there was something off about him. A coldness, a distance that didn't quite fit with his outward charm. One evening, as the wedding day drew closer, Amelia stumbled upon an old photo album in Victor's study. The photos were haunting portraits of generations of his family. The people in the pictures had hollow eyes, lifeless expressions. One particular photo caught Amelia's attention. A woman in a wedding gown stood next to a man who resembled Victor's great-grandfather. Her face was eerily familiar-like, looking into a mirror. This woman, too, had the same cold expression. Amelia's curiosity led her deeper into the study. She discovered a box of old letters handwritten by Victor's ancestors. The letters told a horrifying tale. Long ago, Victor's family had struck a deal with a dark, ancient entity. In exchange for wealth and prosperity, the first bride in every generation had to be sacrificed. Her soul would be the price for the family's good fortune. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face as she realized that she was the next bride in line. Despite the growing fear gnawing at her, Amelia went through with the wedding. The mansion was grander than any place she'd ever seen, its marble floors gleaming, its chandeliers sparkling. The ceremony was elaborate, and yet the air felt suffocating. Every smile seemed too forced, every word too practiced. Victor stood at the altar, his cold eyes fixed on her as she walked down the aisle. He looked perfect, as always, but Amelia couldn't shake the unease growing inside her. She noticed an unfamiliar figure in the crowd, a tall hooded man. He didn't belong. He stared at her intently, making her skin crawl. When she tried to whisper to Victor, asking who the man was, he just smiled reassuringly, telling her to focus on the ceremony. But she couldn't stop the chill creeping up her spine. After the wedding, Amelia and Victor retired to their honeymoon suite. The air was colder than it should have been. Amelia was tired, but the unease inside her wouldn't let her sleep. Shadows flickered in the corners of her eyes, and strange whispers filled the room. She heard her father's voice soft, calling her name. She jumped out of bed, her heart pounding in fear. She rushed into the hallway, desperate to find him, but the mansion had changed. The hallways stretched impossibly long, and the rooms twisted in ways that didn't make sense. It was as though the house was alive, shifting and responding to her fear. The whispers grew louder, louder still, as if closing in on her. Amelia felt the weight of the darkness pressing down on her, each breath harder to take. She ran, but every corner she turned led to more shadows, more strange noises. She called out, but there was no answer, only the darkness. Amelia's flight through the house led her to a hidden garden, where she found a grave. The stone was freshly carved, and her name was etched into it. A cold realization hit her. This was no ordinary grave. This was her grave. Victor appeared behind her, his cold smile wider than ever. Without waiting for her to ask, he revealed the truth. The marriage wasn't for love. It was a ritual, a sacrifice. Amelia was the latest in a long line of brides who had paid the price for Victor's family's fortune. The curse had been passed down through the generations, and she was the chosen one. The mansion seemed to groan in response to the revelation. The ground beneath Amelia's feet trembled, and the spirits of past brideshire doppelgangers appeared. Their faces were vacant, their eyes hollow. Each one had been the sacrifice. Each one now trapped within the mansion's walls, their souls bound for eternity. Amelia's heart raced. The walls of the mansion seemed to close in on her, as if the house itself was closing off any escape. She tried to run, but the house was alive, twisting and reshaping itself to trap her. Victor's true nature began to surface. He no longer resembled the man she had married. His face twisted with an unnatural grin, and his eyes grew cold and empty, like those of the family portraits she had seen. The darkness that had lurked in the corners of her mind was now fully real, consuming him. He told her that she had no choice. The curse had already begun, and now she had to fulfill her role. Amelia was to be the final bride, her soul the price for the continued wealth of Victor's family. She could feel it. The curse was no longer a distant threat. It was a reality, and the wedding ring on her finger felt colder with every passing second. She tried to take it off, but it wouldn't budge. It was as though the ring itself was part of the curse binding her to Victor and to the mansion. Desperate to escape, Amelia ran through the mansion. Every door she opened led to more hallways, more darkness. The spirits of the previous brides whispered warnings, but their voices were faint, drowned out by the ominous sounds of the mansion. She felt her energy draining as she ran, the weight of the curse pressing down on her like a physical force. Victor pursued her, his footsteps slow but deliberate. He seemed to be enjoying her fear, savoring her desperation. Amelia reached the chapel at the heart of the Manshana place where the ritual would be completed. But it was already too late. She had already begun to change. She could feel the curse consuming her, piece by piece. Victor held up the ring, the symbol of the curse. He placed it back on her finger. As soon as it touched her skin, she felt the cold spread through her veins, her vision blurring. The mansion shook violently, as though reacting to the final step of the ritual. The collapse of the mansion. The ground cracked beneath their feet as the mansion began to collapse. The walls crumbled, and the air grew thick with an oppressive darkness. Amelia struggled to breathe as the curse tightened its grip on her soul. The mansion, the source of the curse, was dying. But it wasn't over for Amelia. The spirits of the past brides surrounded her, their hollow eyes watching as the mansion fell apart. They seemed to mourn for her, knowing what was to come. Amelia tried to escape, but she felt herself being dragged down by an invisible force, pulled into the very darkness that had claimed the others before her. When the dust finally settled, Amelia found herself standing outside the ruins of the mansion. The sun was setting, casting a cold light over the destruction. For a moment, she felt relief. The curse had been broken. She had survived. But as she walked away, she caught her reflection in a passing window. Her face was the same, but her eyes were empty, cold, lifeless. The ring on her finger glinted in the dim light, and she realized with horror that the curse had not been broken. It had only just begun. She had become part of the legacy of Victor's family, the latest in a long line of brides lost to the curse. And now, her soul was bound to the mansion, just like the others.